Hello, you beautiful nerds. There is a new horror comedy out in theaters, and just from the premise, just from the trailer, hell, just from the name, you could tell that this movie is gonna be nuts. The story itself sounds like one of those tall tales that have been so sensationalized that when you hear it, you think it couldn't possibly be true. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that this story would actually be turned into a movie. The hype around this flick was pretty huge, and unfortunately, I feel like that hurt my personal experience of the movie. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about what we're talking about. So have a drink or have a smoke, but no coke. This is not that kind of show. And let's have a quick chat about... But first, a prelude. In the year of our Lord 1985, an American black bear fatally overdosed on cocaine that had been dropped by drug smugglers in the woods of Tennessee. And that's it. That's all that happened. He didn't actually go on a rampage terrorizing a bunch of people in the woods. I do remember hearing about this story years ago and being like, whoa, can you imagine how much shit a bear on cocaine got into? Yogi is a fucking handful sober. Well, sober-ish. We all know Yogi smokes heavy Indo. Anyway, this movie is kind of a story wrought from that curiosity and imagination of how crazy that could have gotten if there were actual people around.
No, don't eat that. Let's see what kind of effect that has on us.
It's truly a tall tale film, but not like the film Tall Tale. That movie is... like, does anyone remember that movie? Did I just lose 3 subscribers for even mentioning that movie? With a lot of films that are based on a true story, eventually critics and audiences will bump up against some parts of the movie and be like, how much of this really happened? But the joy of this movie is that it's just a big old what if scenario. I appreciate that the film opens up with an informative quote, and then there's the reveal that the source is Wikipedia. It's like, from the top, you are to take this story with a grain of salt.
But I remember when I read that story, basically that this bear was like collateral damage in this, bizarre drug run scenario and the war on drugs and And I remember feeling deep sympathy for this bear. Like, what the fuck? Like that's so. And so when I read this script, I thought, well, this is the revenge story for the bear. You put these drugs right in front of me. I tasted them. They made me excited. I needed more, And now in the movie, we just imagine, well, what if that bear ran into a bunch of people?
Let me just say that I really respect Elizabeth Banks and the way that she's transitioned from being a world-class character actor to a budding comedy director. She's one of my favorite actresses, and I was very excited to see her direct her first big standalone film. But as I alluded to at the top of this video, I was kind of disappointed by this one. I was expecting to walk out of the theater over the moon, but instead I walked out thinking, yo, what is wrong with me? Because everyone else in the theater was loving it. And I'm glad that this movie is performing well, but something wasn't connecting for me, and it took me a few days to figure out what. Not sure if you guys have ever seen The Great Outdoors, though that's in retrospect just one of the horniest kids movies ever made. Is it a kids movie? Who was that movie for? But that bear was the star of that movie. He was like fucking Orson Welles in The Third Man. The first time I saw it, I found myself terrified yet laughing my ass off, eagerly anticipating the next vicious yet hilarious move this bear was gonna make. And there were only a few moments in this movie that made me feel that way. I think that's primarily for 2 reasons. One, the movie isn't that funny. Like, the script isn't really that clever or interesting. Most of the jokes are pretty cheap. I mean, the drug-addled apex predator is doing most of the heavy lifting in this one. And that brings me to number 2. All the best parts are in the trailer. I'm making a drug analysis video right now about why trailers suck, and this is just another example of that. Now, I don't even normally watch trailers, but this one was kind of hard to ignore. They showed a trailer for this before friggin' Infinity Pool. Now, how many buckets of popcorn can a nigga go buy just to avoid trailers? But yeah, every interesting scene from this movie, there was at least one moment of it in the trailer. There are some great actors in this. I've been campaigning for Hollywood to put Kerry Russell in all the movies since like 2005, so it was a delight to see her in this movie. Bad Southern accent and all. Everyone's favorite Han Solo is pretty good in this movie too. Him and Baby Cube had some pretty good chemistry together. And Isaiah Whitlock? He's literally the best part of the movie. Everything he does in this movie is great. He's the MVP. I know I should probably give it to the bear, but nah, it's Isaiah. Though a lot of human interaction moments in this movie left a lot to be desired. There was some pretty spotty editing and wild ADR that just took me out of a few scenes. The mood of a scene, whether it's supposed to be funny, heartfelt, or scary, is periodically undercut in this movie by a wild line that was clearly recorded in post-production for, I don't know, clarity? But seriously, who is getting lost in the plot of Cocaine Bear? It's pretty straightforward.
Here's what you need to know before you see Cocaine Bear. Nothing. You don't need to read a comic book from 1978. The bear wasn't introduced at the end of the Eternals. If you've ever heard the words cocaine or bear before, you're completely up to speed.
As much as I love Kerry Russell, the film would have actually been better if we were only focusing on the storyline with the cops and the drug dealers, because it is certainly the most interesting story. And it's also the funniest one. It wouldn't have taken anything away from the film. We could still have the bear attacking random people and keep the paramedic scene, because that is hands down the best scene in the movie, also in the trailer. And like, that scene was genuinely funny, thrilling, and creative. But the movie ultimately has a point of view problem. In comparison, there are a lot of characters in Firefly, or just to use a movie reference, there are a lot of characters in Serenity. But you realize that the main character is Mal. In this movie, I don't know who the main character is. Is it the bear? I guess it's I think it's the bear, which is not. You can't actually make the bear the lead of Cocaine Bear. That's not, you can't do that. Speaking of which, the bear looks pretty good, though I think they could have had more fun with the way he looked. Like, he kind of just looked like a normal bear. I was expecting him to have a weird tick, or for his eyes to be like straight fucked and like foaming at the mouth, or something fun like that. But he was just a realistic, he just kind of looked like a angry bear. I didn't hate this movie by any stretch of the imagination. It was a good enough time. I just feel like it could have gone a little further. A good example of this is when the two kids eat a bunch of cocaine, like a bunch of cocaine, which was kind of a funny moment. These kids are great. But then the kids don't do any crazy cocaine things. Like, they don't behave like they're on cocaine at all for the rest of the film, which they should, because they're children and they just did a bunch of cocaine. I definitely feel like I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more if I went into it completely cold. The most interesting part of this flick is wondering what crazy shit the bear is going to do next. And when I already know what it's going to do, it takes away from the excitement a little bit. I was hoping that this would fall into the realm of Ready or Not, or even Violent Night, but this didn't quite hit the mark. Again, this might just be me. In fact, I'm almost certain that it is just me, because everyone in my theater was enjoying themselves, so take that as you will. For me, though, the lackluster directing, writing, and editing kept this from being the funny, violent, campy flick that lives up to its terrific title. My ranking, I didn't love it. Alright, that's it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to all of you subscribers. It helps out the channel a lot, so we really appreciate it. And be on the lookout for my drunk analysis video, where I'm gonna be dissecting the language and psychology of movie trailers. But until then, stay safe, my little dismembered paramedics, and may the force be with you.